康的老年关键多高的，绕高手上不的穷人的，却见脚步关键路上。小道小步，鸟的小松松，六月南高，三月北的，秋水老马，夜北中高见。大路的表是那些，天宝节节给家说说说，谢谢全国，家别路卷土。天上那边天有了些，他别也来面在边过，他的天边天在来长在。夜晚只月那座庙，天见多表那在这家做，我想也知，小店家做的。所有那些就小来去把不看些多面就那三把六一九没个九八。天不来龙吧，所见面天说，年就吧，他不说下，年面的马的主。小姐旁边站着的月姐，我不去见老见这么了，他在上班，他别。我就是来嘛，他把钱那么钱，全归看了钱钱呢，钱当上边了钱嘛。三夜十夜，朝我阿门多说，那么大为是眼里相吧，说着过来，朝多面那样。他没有那我说过让当年小的帮助没有弄的把来说那做些年三百给我的。天当着我，给我来看遍 lo san cha be Let us cultivate bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should all participate in this Lamrim teaching on the stages of the path leading to enlightenment by Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa. I'm going to read about page 2 from this text, volume number 3 in the English translation of Lamrim Chemo, page 147, to give you the blessing of oral transmission first.
ye me zang la me se je ngo bo no ra hi yu zhu ba ra ke lang ba la da je je da wa ra ji wa se wa song de se se le xiong nga me yu me du zhen bo ngo bo yu me du da wa la xie ni ti wo du yang ji ji ngo bo de dang ngo bo me ba da yin da ba da xie wa da wa theo ju je no de da ra ka ye rang xin jie ye ba de me ba me be da ngu zhong sa da me ji ba de no xie ba de wang ji ra kang xie rang xin jie ye ba ji ba de rang xin la do ba me be nang yang me ba me de da no rang xin yu ba ni de ke lang be da ba da wa de wa ju la ngu ne be ka wo so ngu ba rang xin ke lang ne da da ra ti chi xi be me do xi ke lang be xie ba da wa de wa ju ra xie rang yi ye ba ke lang ba la da da nga ra je rang xie ti chi xi be be de na me da ra ju song je yi ba zang dang xi ba zang lo ma su bu da ba le da le jing ye je sha dang mi sha da xie de da xie wa de da ni kang xie rang xin je ye ba xie so je da xie de zhu lu de ba sa wa xie do na rang do na rang xi me be do ni ne dong ba ni dang ba yin de xie ma天国呢，西金旁边小崩给人中着了，让新苗老们呢，让新民呢，这个年的，去当街店要买一把人的那，去的样的东，就说这个样东吧，你了大人呢，写了就能碰。西边这个宿舍里人些给的，他们就东北的，他们要把买那些到那地震的萝卜当觉的。Chike de she de la ba sung jir na me ke nam ne chu yang za de da me ba da wa yi me zang da te ni me chong she do je de yang tam je de go de pa me de na ni ti ti she de ro ngo de da me hu sin yang da ma ye de ji de ti je ra shi me be do ne to ma ye do ma no she de nge pa tong ba ni bon je de be te da pa ni che ji pong ba ji le je de ba ngin le je nge ba ngin do yo chi ge de bo je zhe wo le xian yang de ne lo song na lun bo ge be nga je che bong ye ma zhong da da ni je na me ba ni zhe de zhe xie xie de xie so ba je ro ke de ho zhe ngo bo na ke lang ne xie me ba da ne me da wa ju yang国家呢，对嘛呢？对大爷们对别这些别些到这的，我说到这没这么这些我条就是些点着了些不上这出社里叫年就是把工作就点别把没些把在。ये बार ये मैं बताओ नहीं थी तो वो नहीं तो था बे चीनी जो तो वो नहीं था नहीं तो वो मैं जो देखा ही था तो मैं जो आती से ना ये जो ये तो रंग यूं वो रंग से मैं बे चे जा मैं बनी तो मैं तो लो से सुबह से रो न्याम ना तेरे रोए दे चेदाला कंग चिजू ngô ngar खेलं बगना तेने जितें जंग बे जंग से nga जे दो लें जे सो ngar के जे मे मे ते दा ते माने ये बर में दे बे che दा मे बन ju che तना ngô ju ta da me je wa te na che bar te o ji che sung ba ni ngô bo la ra ngô zhe rang xin de be ngô mo la ta shi ye da wa dong me sa东没到中文，东音节让先对让先对对滚对门就是我的呢，那大点叫了对俺妈也把对这些不是对呢，你小到就就提些是，对俺妈也别让先对，而且么是些本这边写到没写到没把大把呢，我把那让我这让先对对这样，下面那把就真对多音。现在他们这地帮我们弄连接没不是对，现在我们这最新的这些的结巴了送的，现在我呢连接当起的不是没不是对。 Omabani Tida Ranshimia Bara, Devi Tamja Chebra Yudo, Omabani, Linde Sote, Tindi, Judy Ranshimia Malava, Mevabani, Linde Sote, Tindi, Imbarament, Tindi Imbara. Mindebi di Jutin, Juti, Mishi, Tata, Simjin, Namanin, Dilumata, Deni, Shemando. Modon Juti, Meba, Meba, maybe. Jutin la Chabara, de Suxili, de Kaju, Umabani, Meba, Chaver, Mebatan, Chava Meba in the Congress. You want to make it late on Shobo, don't Jibutan, Jidin, Tam, the Raji, Tomba, more in la. Raji, Tomba, more in la. More in la, me baba, Taja, Teta, Medici, Mawa, showing baby, tea, cherry, Oman, Pani. Mebara da Mivadon, Chevra Medo, she, Gora, Shedo. Kadi shall say. Tongues of his and did it. That she did the mother with the did a conjure that any Mushijango with the body, and tiny Mevagaris. That and the Pungam do something, Hajang do that, Pungam do something. She the tick out the Zanda in a Papa Yavzishunta, Zawashira, any Hijabashi, Hijaban Java, success to Ungan Madron, any Omabeg, any Simzabata, Mobas, and the service in the Ranshi Messy Modazan, Messy, near the Drukas. So the Tia Gangovajitan Rahim, tiny, what is lying. That deal doesn't that program a lens about shading. And Conan, you are my slaughter, mother, Meva is large emotions. She just says, that think governor, what are the governors that you know the Yeva money, but never need to check it was what this year was.
No, sir.
Carasana, Tessa, Carsa. That the corner that Pugama got to tomorrow till ya any time Mushikan go about Roshi over the den, over the Rajiva den, she did the Yuga money, but said, it is a shika and a t-shirt, the Karumina, Mia was one of the killing or the killing is that you know the. You make them go to in time Chicago killing it was.
No.
So they won't get the killing or the killing any children any Karsadi. Meva mines large by said the document. Yuba mines loves her was. Yuba mine, but Meva in the Chiquachi Gares, Chamas. That Omogomaras in a yard. The Yuba mine, but the Meva in any sick chair motors, don't lodge and the chair Junse mess.
No,
so this one. So because you mine, Meva Bichara, that Shimsati, that is my guy, Shimsati Gago.
So Geshe read from page 147 to the middle of page 150 from volume number 3 in the English translation of Labun Chemo. So now we are going through sort of a more detailed arguments and dealing with what we started talking about previously. That is, according to some of the early Tibetan masters, we call Pyongama, which means early Tibetan masters. What they say is this, that if you put things under what we call 4 modes of analysis, which is production from self, production from others, production from production from both, and production without causes, right? And if you put things under that kind of 4 modes of analysis, things should be findable. Just because nothing is findable under that analysis, so then they say if something is not findable under that analysis, then that thing should not exist. That should not exist. So that's the assertion of the position. Okay. And so Madhyamikins have been debating with them. They said, So that's your assertion. So if you put things under that kind of analysis, we do not find anything to exist. Okay? So by your assertion, that means you should accept that nothing exists at all. So your position is a nihilist position, right? Because nothing is findable under that analysis. And then you said, if something doesn't, is not found under that analysis, that thing should not exist. Okay? And so as we have talked about this before, and so as you argue back and forth like this, it's as if they are cornered in their argumentation, and then they end up saying like, well, what we actually said is, things are not existent. We did not say things are not non-existent, right? Mathematics said like, you are just playing with the words, right? This comes to the same thing. If you said that things are not existent, that means they are not, right? And they do not exist, right? So you cannot, make an assertion that things are, of that nature, right? And so for you, things cannot exist conventionally, even conventionally, because things should not exist at all, because nothing is findable under that kind of analysis. So that understanding of emptiness you claim to be the position of Arya Nagarjuna and his disciples, but that is the misunderstanding or the misinterpretation of Nagarjuna's position. And so if we look up in Nagarjuna's works such as Fundamental Wisdom, Mulya Madhyamika, Sashe in Tibetan, and then Arya Deva's 400 stanza commentary on Madhyamika called Cheduk Shedak or Shikyaba in Tibetan. And also we look at in the Chandrakirti's clear word commentary or Siksal in Tibetan. What is explained there, directly contradicts what you have asserted to be Nagarjuna's position on the ultimate nature of things. And according to Nagarjuna and the Madhyamikans here, what they are saying is that things do not exist intrinsically, but they do exist, right? Refuting the intrinsic nature of things does not amount to negating the conventional existence of phenomena. So Madhyamikans do accept things exist, but they don't exist intrinsically, whereas the early Tibetan masters have translated the non-intrinsic existence into complete non-existence, right? And that's how they said, well, ultimately, really nothing exists at all. And as Geshe explained that in the Uma Kongpa Rapsal, Unraveling Thought treatise, and the same position has been dealt with. They said, if you say that things are not existent, then that means things are non-existent, right? It's just the use of different phrases, but you're asserting the same thing. So you cannot say that we said things do not exist, but we do not say things are not non-existent, right? Because that's just a play of the words. It means the same thing.
무실라 대다라 송베시로 데레다 제가 결혼견 다다 디 돈dom지어 리바가 오는데 무시jen고 리바가 오는데 에네 디 히버드 가르면은 매바 차바 켈링 것도 왔어 딜링에다 이니 이메메메사드 유메메메라 디 리바 송그러 왔어 어 송그레스 다 결혼 투야 가르서는 에네 오메쇼네 데네 가제샤보고 마 에네 여바데 매바세야게 저 러시 여바다 땡 매바 디레처럼 맞아 제가 매바도 여봐서 책을 추네. 아니 저런 매바다 정신과의 동시시네. 자와도 어딜 추디 샤스.
노서.
어때? 다티도 다 그래서 뭐 메르디 무시지가 송베셔디 세도 저런 게 다다 유메라서 바데게 그래서디 여바이 러시 여바이보다 된 매바세디 무시제네. 엔텔 에네 되게 타실이 제바시네 타이 가르면은 디 기부 가르면은 매배 차바 켈링에서 엔다다 여바마이네 매바 인고 그리 되니 릭바 송그레스 에네 따실레 디임다 ye sha ta wa me sha che ba da ti ji yu mi ni ga la ke we de wa me sha xin sung ba ti ji da yu ba zam da de de ge za ma ri rang xin yu ba da ne che da lung gu se ma de yu ba da ne che da lung gu se wa ma ri da chi rong ko ya de da ji da yu ne che da lung gu se ko ru go ro se da me se to ri se da ene de re se ene ji da rang xin yu ba da me be che ba se ti je gu ri se ti ne ge rong da ene kar sa mushi jengo tal del ya ene mushi ge jeba shi de men me chaba kele be kende ene yeba ma ene me ba yingu gre shora ene yeba ma me ba ma yi ti phasa la cha to ma ri ko ene riba ku ni song song as ta te de me de le
so we're in the middle of page 147 and so the Madhyamikans are telling early Tibetan masters that your position entails nihilistic position because we put things under that four modes of analysis: production from self, production from others, production from both, production without causes. Then we do not find anything under that analysis. And so for that, which means according to your assertion, things cannot exist at all. Okay, and when things are not findable under that kind of ultimate analysis, in Tibetan, then according to you, then they cannot exist at all. Okay? And now you are saying that you are simply asserting that things do not exist, but things are not non-existent, because that really, doesn't fly through us, because it comes to the same thing. You are just playing with the words. And so in the middle of page 147, we have a stanza quoted from Arya Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise, which really, identifies the true extremes, true extremities. Okay? So Madhyamikan's position is free of these true extremes, of extremities. So where the early Tibetan masters have really misunderstood or gone wrong, according to this kind of a textbook quote, is this, that they have regarded existence and intrinsic existence as the same thing. Okay? They have regarded non-intrinsic existence and complete non-existence as identical or same. And because of that, so their position has fallen to the extreme of nihilism. What Nagarjuna is saying is that things exist, right, but not intrinsically, isn't it? Yeah. And so Nagarjuna is not denying the conventional existence of things, which the early Tibetan masters think that he is. Yeah. So we have to differentiate between those cases, as we said before a few times already, that there is a distinction between existence and intrinsic existence, and non-existence and non-intrinsic existence. Yeah. If we don't differentiate between these cases, then we will be trapped in one of the true extremities, the extreme of permanence or eternalism, which is asserting that things exist intrinsically, or the extremity of nihilism, which claims that now nothing exists at all.
Okay. Any question you are your change Yamana and Kodavare or or DJs. That did Tawate do this till I did on she what didn't do what the thing was on that go my language with Ranshi Yuna like in Jigsaw race.
No,
Till I were till I know your Ranshi you were Doba maybe didn't she don't want to curse that, did yueba tene rangshi doba mebe yang mebe teta na rangshi yueba ni de kelang ba takwa tewa gyola oti rangshi yu na takwa tewa she ta takwa shi go rangshi yu na ko jing shu go wa ke jing shu go se na in rangshi yueba ban jing shu yu na in di ngama di chimal ma cham jon de le do ji na le sa ni in di bhaja di rangshi jo le rangshi de bhaja sha to ma ri ka ri se ko ni ga rangshi shu jing di de ba yo ma ba mo to phamin phala karza phame yuebala phalashala phengmar se be namdel oti koi nime so da ko gan chimatil ma leg niwa ma real phe to ma ba phe to me ta ene karshi da ba sheba sa do se leshi ba chu sa go ra ko ma samja ma don chu sa do ba se da rangshi ye chi ji la yang men da ba yang men sheba ba ti ga ru mu ji zan ro sa yo ma res o ti re ga da za xie long di tong de da ce些le都是吧这下是我是吧
So at the bottom of page 147, we have commentary by Chandrakirti in his work called Clear Words on the statement made by Nagarjuna in his fundamental treatise of Mule Madhyamika. And the explanation given here is this, that if one were to assert things exist intrinsically, then things would exist permanently. That means you do not deny the existence of things. You do assert things exist, but they exist permanently. Permanently means they cannot undergo any changes, momentary disintegrations, isn't it? So if that's the position we subscribe to, then we have fallen into the extreme of what we call eternalism or permanence. Now we said things exist intrinsically, isn't it? But then, as a Buddhist, probably come back and say, no, things exist intrinsically, but they also undergo changes. Okay. Well, if things undergo changes, that means momentary disintegration. Then you fall into the extreme. Then they cannot exist intrinsically. Right? If things undergo changes, because then that means they're dependent on some other factors to undergo changes, so they could not be intrinsically existent, right? So under that given condition, you might end up saying that now things don't exist at all, so you fall into the extreme of nihilism. So if you look at, let's say, karma, so if we were to assert that karmic action exists intrinsically, then it would have to exist independently of anything else and permanently. And so then we cannot really talk about the continuity of the karma, right? How we create a karma, it leaves its imprint on our consciousness of the mind, and then a certain period of the time, when other causes and other conditions assemble together, that karma gets activated and brings its result. So you cannot talk about all this cause and effect relationship, with karma and the outcomes, because there should not be interdependent relationship existing between cause and effect, right? There cannot be, because it's intrinsic reality. There is no cause and effect relationship in that framework. Okay, so which means whatever karmas we create and accumulate, they may not be able to bring the results, right? So that's how, one of the aspects of the karma, major aspects of karma that we often talk about is whatever karma we created, generally speaking, they do not get wasted, right? They are going to produce their results. So now we cannot assert that because karmas are permanent and they can't undergo changes, so they cannot produce their results. Yeah. So all these kind of fallacies come up.
He rangji yoba ke lamba takje takta kharsa takta tang nga ji rangji ji ti sheba de me ta song ji yoba zam she la yoba zam ma song so she do ta da xiong de ji ma song de zang rangji zhe ba ke la takje ta zhou什么ji dang be我不yoba zam la takje ta long zhe song mun du wa se so de ba ta de zhe me bu ta pal ta le ene rangxin yoba dang meba ni di cheba chen sa song sha se o ti song do bu ta pal pal ja me za ta ta ti ni he ye re yo xi zo ji dang ji ru de ba sa wa xie do se de bu ta pal da ge Any Ranshin you have a Tata Dogamaji, Chida you have Tata Dogomare. Tiny may have Sheta Dogramata, Ranshi may have tiny Sheta Dogomaris, which Shinju Shehas, what is it?
And so over on top of page 148, it is stated that Buddha Palita clearly explains the difference between existence and intrinsic existence, and non-existence and non-intrinsic existence. So what is stated in Buddha Palita is this: when you simply assert that things exist, right, that does not constitute the view of eternalism. Okay? But if you accept that things exist intrinsically, right, that kind of existence pertains the view of eternalism. Yeah. And in the same text, it's also stated that if you assert things do not exist intrinsically, this does not amount to the extreme of nihilism. Yeah? And so there is a difference between asserting that things are not existent at all, or things are not intrinsically existent. Yeah? And so Buddha Palita has made the distinctions between those cases.
Sometimes Rashi yoga men dig marsin telek gagorwa. Pyoga Rashi men that may Rashi yoga marsi. Rashi meva don't chickbody. Sometimes mess you over years ago.
So on page 148, the middle paragraph, which starts with "in brief." So commentary given on that passage is that there are two positions being tackled here. According to Chitta Martins or Mind-only school, because Chitta Martins assert that things exist intrinsically. Yeah? And so what they say is that absence of intrinsic existence, that kind of emptiness is not the sublime emptiness taught by a Buddha. Okay? And so now Madhyamakers are telling them, if you deny absence of intrinsic existence as a sublime emptiness taught by the Buddha, then for you, Pranjana Paramita or the wisdom gone beyond wouldn't exist. Because what is the wisdom gone beyond? Wisdom gone beyond is the realization of the absence of intrinsic existence. Okay? And by denying that kind of emptiness, so you are really creating karma to be in the in unfortunate states of rebirth. Okay? So from Madhyamika's point of view, Chitta Martins have fallen on the extreme of eternalism. Okay? And now the second position that's tackled is that of the early Tibetan masters. And so for them, if things don't exist intrinsically, then they couldn't exist at all. They said, then what is there? There's nothing. And so their view constitutes extreme of nihilism. So as we have talked about this here, that the reason why, we find, these schools or the followers subscribing to different views which constitute extreme or permanence and nihilism is just because they have not, distinguished between existence and intrinsic existence, and complete non-existence and non-intrinsic existence.
대다양 동이 그래서 대다양 동반일 다니는 자신이서와 싫어서는 포만지를 시ben저와 쓰세리 리지 게다당 동반이다 요바 많이 이도 시 동은 뒤에 로버트 완전히 저기 좀 지게의 최근의 로버트 송전나 미게바 미게나니 최견자 제다 매봤다 이 매장된情况주谢谢都是我되게 제가 내래 가서 랑신 저와 다이나 가지 다 돈이들 그게 돈이 있어야 되는 판이네 돈이들 그게 가자 무시하다 또 야구 하고 셴 최저들 주기는 이네 풍기서 야만이 셰다는 거로 와다 매서는 병가만은 셰다는 거로 와 심장은 나이시는 따다는 거로 와 그니 가르면 이래요 말이지 어때 레이 또만 있었다 뒤에서 로봇다 이제 제가 돈이 양다가 비게 가자 세송마도 셴네 이니 돈이 지 인사시 라가시나 이네 때 로다 양만이 셰다다 양다다 가롱지를 모두 그 딱다된 조서야 말이지 티브라 가단 지게의 최근 로바송 전나 메게남니 취견자 제다 메왔다이 메자데니 신원줄谢谢都是 때려야 최근 로바송 전나세 돈이 로바송 내려와 메게는 취견자세다 다 데리고다 돈이데 그게 매 동반이 있어야 매배 통을 따는 근데 렌제 취사로 렌제 매바 사로 와 취자 그래서 어디제 제가 매봤다에 매다되는 신원주 제가 렌제 매봤다이나 얘네 렌제를 군대를 뒤에는 얘네 매장 신원주 제가 인송적으로 해야죠 강제 돈이면은 그 무게나 얘네 레게도 나야 찾아 매사온 거래 대마스 차서는 얘네 게들랑도 요마 되면은 얘네 그 디관바지 시에서는 얘네 쩌와치면 얘네 매장 세도 신원주 세도는 배지 년절 다 녀월도 그래 있어야지 도나다
On page 148, in the later section, we have quotes from Arya Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise, Mulya Madhyamika, and Chandrakirti's clear word commentary on Nagarjuna's precious garland. And so what's stated in Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise is, let me quote this and then translate the explanation given. I quote, "If they view emptiness in the wrong way, those of limited intelligence will be ruined," unquote, right? So what this means is, if, we misunderstand emptiness, that means, we don't have a clear, precise idea or the image of what is being refuted or negated, the gakja, the object of negation or refutation. What is exactly negated here precisely? And then we try to understand emptiness, we are likely to misunderstand what emptiness is. So if the misunderstanding of emptiness happens, so that can be detrimental spiritually, because either we will fall into the extreme of eternalism or fall into the extreme of nihilism, right? When we don't have the precise idea of what's being negated or refuted, right? My first footnote in the theory of emptiness, then we might end up, not understanding emptiness correctly or misunderstanding it. So due to which, either we might, become eternalists, saying that things exist intrinsically, so that's the meaning of emptiness, or we might say that, if things don't exist intrinsically, then nothing could exist at all, and then we become nihilist. Yeah, so that kind of risk or the dangers are involved. And so continuing with that theme, in Nagarjuna's precious garland, and as explained by Chandrakirtis, is this, that if we fail to precisely identify the object of negation, And now we claim that nothing exists at all, just like the early Tibetan masters, which means that we have to say that law of karmas, right, don't exist. Right? There is no such thing as karmic actions and their outcomes or the results. And if we deny the law of karma, we are casting aspersion onto the law of karma, and so which means that itself is creating a tremendous negativity, and that can only precipitate rebirth in the hell, where the expression is you will sink into the filth of nihilist views, meaning that this kind of position will lead us into a rebirth in hell and other unfortunate states of existence. Because now what we are saying is that nothing exists at all, so which means there is no such thing as what we call practice of abandonment, abandoning negativities and defilements, because these things don't exist at all. There's nothing to cultivate and adopt, or to cultivate, right? We call lang thor. Lang means to adopt, to cultivate. Thor means to get rid of, to, right? So this is all based upon the law of karma. So if nothing exists at all, then we have no practice at all. There's nothing to abandon, there's nothing to do. And so such kind of denial of law of karma is a great negativity in itself, and that could lead us into unfortunate states of rebirth.
지대 탐지라 고안데바 민도는 디지 제대로 고본데도 맥스 생기 동반이 되게 디지랑 심이거든 동반이 많이 노신디 딩에버 동반이 본조데 대달 본의 추기 본지 레기 녜버 녜종조 원조로스 데레 다셔도 디셈즈베 쩨바리게 와도 고마야기 이 최답제 기로 고하면 되게 녜랑 심이 쓰고 뭐든지 고반 되게 오마 텔레 자자 저는 디데 고안 되게 메나 ini tanda meg toya bige langdo de tende nam ya de tong tong gu ini tongba di mesin lan di ma tongba yu den da ne rahi mesin di ma was di me de che rahi mi was ya de oni mais o ti la ya di o se mai no xie nge ba da tongba ni bo ju de o ti lam ge de sem za ba ro di tongba ni pang ge de pang yin za chue gi pong lu ri chue gi pong san na ke ti ma de pong san da 去写没有啥个东西碰上东西没有了东西碰车是吧我这个碰连营业营人做就说啥现在我这了呢你营人做的是的
At the bottom of page 148, continuing the same line of thinking, what's stated there as explained by Geshe is that essentialist, that here we think of Chitta Martins on the mind-only school because they assert things as intrinsically existent. So the Madhyamikans are, telling the Chitta Martins, or the essentialists here, that, let me see, how is we going? Rangshim Meba. Tanda di kaza semzam bagi ge umma bala roge rangshe me bala bi na ko wade bu so chula bala
semzam ba tu thag umma ba le ja de ngan to rangshe me la ge ma ti chi mes la ro wa ja da chura rangshe me ko wade ge me ne ke de rangshe ne chura ke lenge ne ko ma de chura ta ya wa le ju ne chura rangshe me sa ma la wen di rangshe da me su sen ya se di da 다 먼저 대디 메고 통하다 무슨 통과를 시워라
알레디 출라 비고
semza balawor da seda meg thongi de tando mes mala sigura ose ta tip mala seda tisa na in rahi tong ba tong yin se de tong yin maris o lamge de semza barda o te la so na o de chue yi pong re so ta ta de tu sa ding ma de semza ba da oma sigura wa ko ma de yo de oma wa o tire
let me read you this. So the argument here is between Chitta Martins, mind-only school proponents or the followers, and the Madhyamikans. And so Madhyamikans assert that things are empty of intrinsic existence, or things are not intrinsically existent. Now Chitta Martins are alleging the Madhyamikans, but now you are really casting aspersion onto the law of karma. So you said they don't exist at all, right? If things don't exist intrinsically, then they don't exist. So they are alleging the Madhyamikans that you are really nihilist here, right? You are making a big mistake. What you claim to be emptiness absence of intrinsic existence, emptiness, is really not emptiness at all. That is a nihilist position. How can you hold such a position? That's what the Chitta Martins are telling Mother Megans. Look, just open your eyes. All the things exist in front of your eyes, right? And how can you deny the intrinsic existence of all these things, right? But the Mother Megan said, we are not denying the existence of all the things in front of my eyes. I'm saying that these things don't exist intrinsically. Okay? I'm not saying these things don't exist at all. I'm just simply saying these things do not exist intrinsically. So this is how I think there is that kind of the difference between Chitta Martins and Mother Megan's. Because from Chitta Martin's point of view, Mother Megan's understanding of emptiness is really not an emptiness. Absence of intrinsic existence is not real emptiness, because for them, things must exist intrinsically, and they think that Mother Megan's position is really denying the conventional existence of everything.
Bonga marun dani jin nami pani jidu jo xie to xie sung bi xie ro se xie do sem za bala ra xin chum na ene lende sha ji gang ga te ma di bi nan ene yin song bi ge ro ge te song do as o de la de tan ta te le yong phe ga me len ji ja do wa ta ta de sem za ba ta ta mo ngo yes la de mes do pa xin ta ta na de do di ene phe ga ma de nga thang bo ko ni ene mes la go thang bo yu ba khe la de 이제 이번에 매스케라고 말했어. 어디라고 좋아. 근데 그거자 능고 그 나르케를 치매 봐 나는 다 가자. 그거자 되면 가자. 요리형세. 그거자는 되면 다 예바 민디지 지시 체베 체다와 저때 무슨다다 매제 봐대나 셰바테 어지 시 텐다와라 셰바다 송지 색세 레정 내주 군도 되면 미시바자지 저와 러시메바도니 뒤동만이 동답이 진이지 또번에 타니즈로 민주때 거기 다들 매와 요티서는 지요원 저 시대다 나를 요바는 힘 마음이 치제 매바 예도 또라 해송배 쇼 냐나스다 거기 롱디랑도 와 이송 롱디 같은 데서 왔다 통보 이 예바케라 근데 매바케라나 이네 시다도 그래서 통보는 그 자와네 예바케라면은 이네 시다도 말스 이거 롱디 계셔 이거다 시다 거 통보 나 내가 말해 내시의 가와서 통보랑지 예수지라 인데 신 메스라나 어때라 이네 롱디 내시도 그래서 이네 보가마도 그 통보는 메시 노서 강가 베스라와 어디 라서다 이네 텔야 내시도 말이죠
Ale tangpone me la.
Tangpone me la wa.
What is it? We're on page 149. So, in reference to Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise and Chandakirti's clear word commentary on Nagarjuna's work, as I said this before, that the primary, opponent in this debate is really not so much, in a sense, early Tibetan masters. Early Tibetan masters have kind of, by the way, got dragged into this, or I don't know, but are the really essentialists. And, and we mentioned Chitta Martins. And so the early Tibetan masters are kind of arguing with, debating, I should say, not arguing, debating with Madhyamikans. They said, the critiques that you're offering on our position does not, stand, because we are not saying that things first exist intrinsically, and then later on they don't exist, right, intrinsically, right? That's not our position. If that's what we are saying, then all the criticism or the critics you are labeling against us, that would work fine, right? Then you're right. Yeah. We are saying right from the beginning, nothing exists at all. Okay? And so the arguments you're making against us is not working. Yeah? We are not saying that things first exist intrinsically and then later on, right, and then something happens, they change, they don't exist, right? And in which case, they don't exist at all. But that's not our position, right? From the beginning, we said nothing exists at all. So our position is, different.
Any cheveta lungal that chijungo tabokela baguna, any jangwen the cheda marvesi. Jangwen josh nama ngaji tambo con kelang marvas. If tambo jang is kela, and didn't me kelang marvas. In the jangwen josh ngaji came in cheda shagu marvesi. Or that thing goes on right. Jangwen tambo jang you didn't me la marva.
Right.
In this of my channel, the music that made Cheva said, Rashi to any changing tell Marcel. Chita the moon you are Jigabe did a mares. The long the Tabokela will go with Gizem Mares. The long need also.
So I think basically the early Tibetan masters are claiming, like, don't call us nihilists, because we are not, right? And because they claim themselves to be the Madhyamikins, right? Then they quote Nagarjuna's work and Chandrakirti's works to sort of support their contention, and the way they understood what Nagarjuna is saying, And so according to them, I think the nihilist position is, if you say something exists in the beginning and then you deny the existence of it later on, that is a nihilist position. Okay? But we have never said something exists in the beginning at all, right? So we are really not nihilists. That's what the early Tibetan masters are telling Madhyamikins. Okay? So now the Madhyamikins are telling them, okay, so according to you, right, nihilism means that in the beginning something exists, and then you deny the existence of that. That only considered nihilist, right? Then what about the what we call Charvakas? The Tibetan word is Gyangpempa, right? Don't you accept them as a nihilist? Because the Charvakas, what they say, Gyangpempa, is that there is no life before and after, okay? And so they are accepted as a nihilist, right? But according to you, the Charvakas cannot be a nihilist, because in the beginning they didn't say there is a life before and after, and then later says, I have a change of heart, now it doesn't exist. They didn't say that. They said right from the beginning, I don't believe in life before and after, right? So wouldn't Charvakas be the nihilist for you, right? So now it's very difficult to deny that,
Oh, the cool long time, the long time, any channel did that. Raji to na. Any Yaman Tawada, Yaman Chevan do the same. Tonga Raji to the jury Vakela and Cheta do it on the long that in the Maris. Raji to Vakela and Tajeta do it on that is.
No, sir.
Monsieur Rosa.
No.
Tingama Yeve, Raji, Tingama Ship and Zibi. Cheta Mevatamba, over now the run wood of Raji, you came in about you didn't do a inje. Cheta Taji tea, bon, man, or say. Cheta and Raji, you may show Marva, Tongo, Chevas guy, John, as you may later Yomar said, today Chevaka Marva. But this is what you want. Standard Raji, you were killing Cheta Jora, Cheta Tanungajora, or Tilton Goddess.
No, sir. So in the middle of page 149, in the reply section, you find where I said Gyangpempa, I used the word Charvakas, but here another word they use is called Lokayata. Okay, so they are considered as a nihilist because they, right from the beginning, do not believe in life before and life after. In other words, rebirth at all. Okay, so if you go by the definition, nihilism definition according to early Tibetan masters, then there wouldn't be a nihilist, right? They did not say in the beginning we believe it, then we change our heart, right? They didn't say that. Okay, and so basically, Madhyamikins are telling the early Tibetan masters is that you are quoting Nagarjuna's work and these other works, but you are misquoting them and misunderstanding what Nagarjuna actually mean by emptiness, right? And then you use the passage to support your contention, which is not feasible.
Lende me ban devi cheda de mende su hen su ze le song cheda ne lende da dinama te resha go ma su tu de kyo ne lende da yi me se na ne jangbe ji wa lende be wa ta go res jangbe ba ji wa de tu la yu se ra ati le de ne te ta ma le jangbe ji wa ma res jangbe ba lende ten me se go nge lende rang shi me se yo ma de ten me se me se tham ja le wa ji yo se ra wa 대대너지 오마베 렌데 정신 가자 땡땡이라고 그래. 장베베 렌데 땡땡 켈링 말와스.
그래서
기제야 다그면도스.
그래서
제도 장베도 숨바게 정신밀라르 마도지. 땡 메스라고 말했지. 근데 기제도 탐자가 가가리. 이제 숨고 말했어.
그래서 on top of page 150 essentialists are alleging the Madhyamikans that your position entails nihilistic position because you accept that karmas don't exist intrinsically, and so if they don't exist intrinsically, they couldn't exist at all. So that is a nihilist position. So then you have become like a Lokayata or the Charvakas, right? Because the Charvakas don't believe in life before and after, because which is based on the law of karma. And Madhyamikans are explaining to the essentialists, no, there is a big difference between the Lokayata's assertion and the reasoning and our assertion and reasoning. Don't put us in the same basket. We don't belong there. And Lokayata or the Charvakas Yangbemba, so they are denying the existence of life before and after completely, right? Conventional existence. Whereas we accept that. We accept the law of karma. We are simply saying it does not exist intrinsically. We are not saying it does not exist at all. We are saying it does exist, but not intrinsically. So that's a different assertion than the Lokayata. Yeah. But we also said that things exist because things are dependent arising. That's our reasoning, isn't it? Whereas the Lokayata or the Gyangpemba, they don't believe in the dependent arising. So they deny this. So the reason we use and the assertion we have are very different from those of the Lokayata or the Charvakas or the Gyangpemba.
The Gyangpemba said, Joshua said, Dini Chima Doa, Naman de Yunga Madon is a mess laro, what it is. 6 or digit. And Omabega and Lendi Rashi Kaza, Jawanga to the Rashi miss Lara Matoji. And then Naman de Yunga Madon, but didn't pass him or Madon, you didn't go Maris. Jawanga that Rashi, she don't know him a shadow. Rashi Yamara, so that young women was very Layata, and Oma Laya, you think how I use, teaching she. Tisel and Derkaji Oma Badne, never but the Chava made this. Kong she gave the Miguel show about the dribble, the data, and Ranchi Tomber Moina. Tim never more. What did I young made him or she ember? Teach Omabani never more the Chava made she go shadow, so that is that Omaba did that in a young man, she was they didn't even be able to share the Chava to say, in what did it ever she go to see herself?
No, sir. And so we're on page 150 still. And so the Madhyamakers are saying to the essentialists that our assertion is different from that of Lokayata because we assert things exist. Right, law of karma exists, life before and after exists, but they deny that. We are saying that they don't exist intrinsically, which is different than saying they don't exist at all. And we use the dependent arising as a reasoning to assert, right, how things exist, whereas Lokayatas don't believe necessarily in the dependent arising. Because for the Lokayatas, the big test of whether things exist or not is, can you see it, right? So they said there is no life after and before. Why? Because who has seen it? Tell me. Who saw that somebody came from the previous life to this life and, something will go into the next life? Nobody has seen it. So therefore, hey, hello, nobody saw it, no witness here, it doesn't exist. So that's their reasoning, whereas Madhyamikans, don't go with that reasoning, right? A lot of things that we don't see exist, and depending upon the law of dependent arising.
Oh, this, the young, my, the Omata, the thing, George, my, then George, she didn't. Polos of Tangier March, never Martin, the thing, George, Imbish, Rashing, Tombo, Guani, Jitin Poru, no more top of mind, on the chicken and Jitin, the Novo number Rashing, Migban, Jitin Poru in Dirumata, Jitin in the Poru, Madon, Jitin, the Migban, Jitin, there, maybe over the Novo hand, go on the Shiba, here songs, so she had a tardy, Tanda, Moon, she had Chibadi, because young Baba is any. 교황만 데 엄마가 가르쳐나 아니 랑시 교황아지 랑시 메세 땡땡이 유대기 랑시 메세 워레스 이 장배바기 생각만 내용마다 드시면서 교황아지 저 마동에서 뒤 유대기는 교황아지 메세 워레스 그래와 어제 뒤니 쳐봐데스 이거 봐 제가 장배는 송구마리스 가르사 직대미 머리비 뭐 힘바디 마와시도 셰송소스다 인데 식세가도 코인들 인 십자지에 버다 장배바 송구도 송구마리스 엄마비 땡데케야 땡데임베 주디지 애니 교황아지랑 시메스다로와 다 장배비 교황아지 메스한테 마우동 주디 까만디와다 디파도 마우동 주디 메스라로와 저도 그 랍다카가래서 어디다 선수와 그런 상황에서는 랑시면 메과인데 다 장배도 셔보면 죽상와로와
So in the big passage quoted from Chandrakirti's clear words on page 150, what we find stated there is the distinction between Madhyamika's position on life before and after and Lokayata's position on that. Lokayata's or the Gyaltsen Tibetan denies the very existence of life before and after on the ground or the reasoning that nobody has seen it. I have not seen it. Have you seen it? Right? Who saw somebody came from the previous life into this life, and who's seeing that something goes after this life into the next one, right? So nobody has seen it, so therefore it doesn't exist. Right? They're completely denying the existence of life before and after, or the rebirth. Whereas the Madhyamikans are saying that rebirth does not exist intrinsically. Life before and after exists, but not intrinsically. And so that's not the same thing as saying that life before and after doesn't exist at all, because the reason is the dependent arising. Life before and after does not exist intrinsically because it is dependent arising. So that, but still, the essentialists are hearing pretty much the same thing. They said, well, if you deny the intrinsic existence of life before and after, that's the same as the Lokayatas. Now you are saying that doesn't exist at all, right? So they're translating the absence of intrinsic existence into complete non-existence.
semzabe yongjo ta de da ri chora gyuzen mendo ainanda ene karsa talu menda de kare ne mena yangwe be jawa ngaji me bata choro ge ne rangshi jawa ngaji me se ta thon jawa ngaji me bata wa songor was se ta ti chewa jia me to si gyuzen yonanda mena che si kai mi to se jawa ngaji me bata chi bare se
So the essentials are quite stubborn here, right? They're telling Madhyamikas, I don't care, what reason you come up with, or but us it's the same thing. Lokayatas are saying there is no life before and after, but you are saying that there is no intrinsically existing life before and after, but you are using different words, right? But you guys are same, you give me the reason, but it doesn't matter. Your reason is not working. It's the same. You both are denying the life, denying the rebirth.
Lene so da yoba kono de kelen be shares o de da minra gizin de da ni jangbe be lende temi kelen gori o ma be lende temi kelen ko kono de lende use wa o de tsung mi 제가 장배를 총고 말이 스티미도 특색을 해서와 그때 대다 다 거버랑 이거 많이 배 니라 매버 니도 또배 셔시 레히 따와 되는 거는 정보 요디 해나 매디 엄마바타 군조 요바 캐는 배 셔다 대다게 니케만레 셔 메수 바니도 해송소사 아디 콘데테도 중딜.
So on top of page 151, based on Chandrakirti's clear word commentary, we can see that the claims that Madhyamikans are making and the Lokayatas or the Charvakas are making are very different completely. Okay? Lokayatas or the Charvakas are completely denying the existence of life before and after, right? It doesn't exist even conventionally. Whereas the Madhyamikans are saying that they exist conventionally, so they are not denying the very existence of life before and after, but they're simply saying that it does not exist in and of itself or intrinsically. So there is a difference between one denying the very existence of something, like rebirth, and the one saying that it does not exist intrinsically. So there is a difference between accepting something existing conventionally or denying the very conventional existence of things. So that's a big difference.
다 해서 되는 꾸서 렌데라스 케 렘베 엄마 렌데 소 케르메 엄마 반데바 닌지데 장베바다 장베바다 따완자와 때도 사티 다 식세스디 가르데 그서 꾸서데 렌데 열라라
네.
딜라데 다 버가라 꾸서데 메라고라 다 버가마데 장베디 치바데 리스오다
네.
타예데 메세 엄마부터 버가라 데라와 네. 다 버가라 데니 장베지 와라 시자시
So then on page 151, based on Chandrakirti's clear words, what we see is that the position of early Tibetan master is really similar to the Lokayatas, okay? Because they said nothing is findable until ultimate analysis, so nothing exists at all, right? So nothing exists at all means conventionally even. So that's what exactly the Lokayatas are saying. There is no life before and after at all, right? Whereas the Madhyamikan said, our position is different. We are not saying life before and after doesn't exist. It exists conventionally, but it does not exist intrinsically. Okay. So we'll stop there today, and we welcome your questions and observations.
I'm wondering what the Chittamatrans have to say in regards to two things. It just, I'm sure I'm not the first one who would say something like this. They say things exist intrinsically. And then at the same time, they say phenomena arises from the same natal source, the same karmic seed as from the mind. That's how it shows up. So they're giving us the means by which it arises. So they are saying it arises in dependence on the natal source and da-da-da-da-da. And then at the same time, they're saying
they exist intrinsically.
Right. So what's their answer to that? That's the first question.
Sure. Okay. Let's go one by one. Okay, sure. Mara condition ni years again. Ta tanda di nganzo ngwe ma bena tanda di pezen sha di mesenza ba sha wa ge. Mesenza ba gi kalsa wala ta du che bena ane chue tham che rangsing du ba insla wa ge. Ta rangsing du ba ne tan kala ma den ba sku wa. Ine ya kolan zo du sha du kana bena di nyugo sa bena ke ba dar wa ge. Gyujen le ke ba di ko zo ke ling wa sa ge. Sidu kala ane di ta da te gi me do wa sa wa. Sa ben de nyugo sa ben le den ke ing go re ya rangsing du ba sla du kala kan de se go so da.
시도도 로히 주바다 카르사 데레 누주 민다다 태교 로히 좀 때문에 저기 태교 로히 좀은 세대 축도 때문에 하고 와.
나네.
야 선수하고는 로히 좀나 지를 또 쇼 로히 주바도 또 히든 켈랭 거라. 내가 가가 줬다. 그래와. 세다 디 도나 단다 님마 대야 계셔도 세다 엄마도 분수를 보면 뭐다 언제잖아. 제 엄마가 sem자와 안요를 해서 제 정도시야 되게 윤대 합스텐 다 가지 러기트에 고소 야보지다 땡리다 니 야보지 말나 그 안요신 디인고 그래서 안요시도 나기 차고라
나래
저도 다 땡리다 러기트와 축도니 디와 야보 줘야 하고서나
나로
엔데 타야라
나래 Essentialists, and in this case we said Chittamatrans, you're right, they accept that things exist intrinsically, but then it is still possible to assert cause and effect relationship among things. Right? They said, because their understanding, they said the intrinsic existence does not preclude cause and effect relationships. They said, yes, things exist intrinsically, but they could still arise from different sources, causes. Okay? And this is where the difference is. The Madhyamikan said, we differ in terms of what intrinsic existence means. For us, intrinsic existence means something that exists with some kind of fixed entity or the nature, right? That does not need anything else at all to exist. It doesn't depend on it at all, right? That's the kind of intrinsic existence we are talking about. So if something could exist possibly that way, then that thing would not be dependent arising, isn't it? It would not, right, exist dependently, could not exist dependently. So that's why I think the very notion of what intrinsic existence means, right, is different. We see the difference between Chittamatra and Madhyamikas. And that's why sometimes Geshe said, somewhere people thought that, when Madhyamikas use a lot of different reason, logic, they thought, they're trying to use their power to sort of abusing the Chittamatra a little bit, right? They say, no, you got it wrong. That's not what it is. I think what's important for us is to have that, what we call the clear image of what intrinsic existence means, isn't it? Right? If we differ in the notion of intrinsic existence, right, then we will always have disagreement, isn't it? If the intrinsic existence means that something exists independently in and of itself without depending on anything else all, right? Okay. Then you cannot assert that kind of existence as being complementary with dependent arising, right? Whereas Chittamatra, I think the view of intrinsic existence does not, right? It differs from that. Then the Samsamba Quran Rangshin Duba say the Karsor that Tsukdu Duba Jil Samtang Yomar.
그리고 죽도 서울단 거, 그리고 죽도 캐는 거로. 죽도 캐는 거. 거기 죽도 다 대대기 기득기가 라. 죽도는 유코로 문도 좋아할 시작하다.
나네.
좋아.
나네.
유코랑 저
아니 규제는 그 땡겨 저 유닛 죽도.
유닛 유닛 죽어라. 그러니까 여러.
So I think in terms of what it means to have a fixed entity, I think Chittamatrans and Madhyamikans, they have the same understanding shared. But according to Chittamatrans, right, things exist intrinsically, means objectively, right? Things exist from their own side. But given that, they said that cause and effect relationship exists from its own side as well, right? That's their understanding, right? He said, you know what, look at that. Everything exists out there, right, objectively. And within this framework, they said cause and effect exists. Even the cause and effect relationship exists objectively from its side, right? That's what the Chittamatrans are saying.
This becomes even more bizarre because given that they posit no external reality. So how can they say out there?
Okay.
And then this gets even
Right.
more weird now.
Then again, then the Tsukdu Druwa and Yungwen years kind of say something by shade to what I'm saying, and did a wagon, Pacha Dinju or wagon. Chetan Big Pachang, but big Yomars like or was again. And Tsukdu the Drubaji Yobaja, and Pachang, Chumdina Pash, then Tata take Yomar was that.
this is that the Pacha Dinju said this or that going into Oceana. Dodevada Shirama, you the Eugene Dewa, you cannot to Yachi, you just cannot Kakadu Shawara. Somebody don't read that you the Eugene Demina Maris, Kashina, you the travel, Lord still got Shawara. That didn't yet on you by the shot, that take your logical house or
I'll send some back because or Eugene to beg Pacha that you do a Pacha in the dating.
Pacha Loyun Pajajimena, and that Dushami to Shagora. Dushami made that Yoro. It's the Loy Pajashawa Togora. The Chitan did it that the Cordon Shena. Situation. Some Zabetobeta, you don't want to Hidike Legua. That Ronjiva decayed over that Tobeta in the Roman Melguris, that thing you thought they were Tata di Luorwa. So the Ronjiva Tobeta the killing about. She said, Ronji was a sense of a tire Tara to the show.
You will talk about in Taxam inside the road.
Sense of Tobeta in Romunius or what? That Ronji Romuni, Tobeta might be kept, Tobeta killing Mara.
Somebody killing Mara, Tobata killing
doesn't killing Mara. Or teach her to watch that Tobeta said the Roji Quack and Lingos. Tobeta said they take you there, Taran Shagota. That he days told Leo Rojibe Junesha show Togo Marwa. You want to give a shago or right. The Tobeta doesn't quite a Taran Lingo.
Nonsense. That is sometimes you do the Eugene of Pachachi to a shago. That's a daughter of the Chirama, which Pachaka can do also.
Daughter Kuishina did it. You da Eugene that you make Eugene Tagas, you didn't use it for those
yeah, so now it gets more complicated. Welcome aboard. That's where the fun is actually. So Geshe said, Chittamatrans, you're right, because they talk about how there is, in all things that exist are the products of predispositions on the mind, latencies, Bhakcha Tibetan, isn't it? Okay? But asserting that, they also assert dependent arising nature of the predispositions of the Bhakcha. Okay? For example, subjective perception and its object, right, what object perceived, they both arise from the same predisposition. Okay? So there's some kind of a common ground there. So there's a little bit of dependent arising, So this is how they said things exist intrinsically, but they could also exist dependently, in some sense. Whereas, for example, like Vaibhashikas and Sautenticas, right, for them, the way our perceptions arise is an object exists there. When we, our perception comes into contact with the object, then it gives rise to the perception, right? So things exist out there by itself. So this is where the complexity is. Chitta Martins accept that things are merely labeled, but at the same time, things are intrinsically existent. See that? That's kind of really strange, difficult for us to understand. They said things are merely labeled, but they are also intrinsically existent. Whereas Sevatandika Madhyamikans do not accept that things are merely labeled. Okay? They said things are dependent on the subjective perception that are not merely labeled. The crux of the matter is the word some, the merely, right? That's the instrumental word. Okay? So according to Geshe, Sevatandika Madhyamikans really understanding of what it means merely labeled, they completely agree with the Prasangika Madhyamikans. Okay? But they could not take that position, so therefore they said things are not merely labeled. We know what you mean, We understand, they really have understanding of almost closer to understanding of Prasangika's understanding of mere label. Whereas the Chitta Martins and others, their merely label understanding does not correlate with Prasangika Madhyamikans. They have slightly different. Okay. So those are different positions. So that's the complexity of things, how some schools assert that things exist intrinsically, but they're also dependent arising. Whereas for Prasangika Madhyamikans, if things are dependent arising, then they cannot be intrinsically existent. So all this, subtleties exist. Yes, your second question, right? Or go ahead, yeah.
Thank you, Geshe, for your teachings. I just wanted to confirm 2 points. The first point is that when you said things don't exist, but they do not exist, is that the view of the Madhyamikans?
Oh, no. That's the view of the early Tibetan masters. So things are neither existent nor non-existent, right? The early Tibetan masters said, we do not accept things are, what's the word? We said things are not existent, but we did not say things are not non-existent, right? That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, that's when I'm more confused then. Because for me, I understood that things don't exist, but at the same time, they do not exist. And by things don't exist intrinsically, but they do exist conventionally.
Yes.
Not means they exist. So I thought that this view was the view of the Madhyamikans by saying they do not exist intrinsically, but they do exist conventionally.
Oh, okay.
Is that right or wrong?
Okay. I'll come. Check with the other. Kurang disagree with that, and that they can also sick vegetation or wagon. Tagi the Pyongama bagger wagon. Thing. Now almost said things in English. Pyongama bagi ane karso kore chur wagen. Yoba mines la mother ching meba mines la message or wagen. Yoba mine meba message or wa. Kurang samba di kwe deshe di uma bagi tawar sometimes on sar wagen. Yoba mines se duka ranging yoba mines wagen. Meba mines se duka la teme de meba mines se di uma bagi koden taka marwe so wagen.
This Pyongama this over. Yoba mines jia me jagme kora mo rashi me yoba kebar jayo.
Kana deshe dinde kyamen ko uma bagi tawa da did goro. Ina da ina uma bagi tawa da yoba yemi memi chego maru da.
Yoba mines se ade rashi yoba chegil china mune thanda se yoba mines da da ome shungdi sha yoba mines ya khae be rashi yoba mines. Yoba mines se ade thaye de mines ya goro wa. Pungama Gurkura Gaga Yavama Bata, Mevati, Ranshi Yavata, Yavachava Mayoshi, Mevata, Rashi Mevade, Meve Chava Majev, Kundo Hidiva Redora, what is it?
Okay, I think this will help. I mean, what you understood as Madhyamikan's viewpoint, I think that's correct. But the way the use of the expression, where they don't use, the Madhyamikas don't say, we accept that things are, neither existent nor non-existent. They don't say that. So if we look in the Madhyamikan literatures, sometimes, we might just simply find the words called things don't exist, okay? But if we understand that, it means things don't exist intrinsically, right? That's the Madhyamikan's viewpoint. And sometimes they might say, things what are called exist, right? That means things are conventionally existent, not intrinsically existent, right? If that's the understanding we have, as it is said, then we have the understanding of the Madhyamikan's viewpoint. Okay? Now, the early Tibetan masters, for them, if they say things don't exist, it means they don't exist at all. They don't mean things don't exist intrinsically. That means they don't exist at all, period, right? Essentially, if they say things exist, for them means they exist intrinsically, okay? And which is not, which is refuted by the Madhyamikans. Does that clear a little bit position? Yeah. So
Yes,
I think your understanding of the Madhyamikan viewpoint is fine. It's just that Madhyamikans do not use the word that they are neither existent nor non-existent. They don't say that.
But then I don't understand the view of the early Tibetan school, which says things do not exist, but they do not exist. What, what do they refer to then?
Okay. That the Quran teaching was I'll ask Geshe to re-explain the early Tibetan master's position, right? And again, Pyongama bagi dojuchar wage, chidi yabush koma sonsa chena wage, Pyongama bagi da tagi ke yoba mai larwage, yoba mai meba mai sajor wage.
Tagi tanga chayo ye kharesan, da Pyongama we yoba da rahi yoba meba da tayi meba nyinga khasa. Ranshi mevada meva nijikba soorwa. This is my cow, this and that, Pazil Tanda Gobuldur is a longer Amalia, the Cheddar is the Lendi Mendigmar City, Mambo Yunza, Tati, little Goma is the cause of the Kalian Gova. She's the Kundu Yuba is large, Meva is large, this Sindu Dinishero. This is that the children Meva 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 in Cheva Yomaris. Or the Gozus is that another Terishia to draw the Iba or the daughter.
I think where maybe the confusion is like the whole today's our teaching is focused on the things, the early Tibetan masters, right, for them, they have, not for them, I should say, they have not differentiated between the existence and intrinsic existence and non-existence and non-intrinsic existence, just like the Madhyamikans. Are you with me so far, right? So for them, if something, how should I say, doesn't exist intrinsically, then it should not exist at all, okay, right? And so that's why, so when the Madhyamikans are debating with them, right, and then they get into this cornered position where, because they believe in Nagarjuna, and Nagarjuna has said the law of karmas exists, outcomes exist. So they couldn't say, oh, Nagarjuna didn't say that. So they have to accept that, right? So somewhere when they get cornered in the reasoning of argumentation, so then they ended up saying things like, we are saying that things do not exist, but we are not saying that things are not non-existent. Are you with me? But it's the same thing, isn't it? It's a use of different words. Whether you say things are not existent or things are not non-existent, it comes to the same position. That's what the Madhyamikans say, that you cannot hold that kind of a position. You cannot tell us that things do not exist, but things are not non-existent. Things do not exist means things are non-existent, isn't it? So that's the argumentation that we've been using. So I don't know how, but that clears up. Maybe need more thinking. Yeah. 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 Jim. So if somebody says things are not existent, then that means things are not things are non-existent, right? It comes to that position. So, yeah. Yes. Okay. Right.
So as I understand it, one way of understanding emptiness is that our minds impute onto a basis of imputation.
Right.
And so I assume the other different schools have
Okay.
So we're imputing inherent existence into the basis of imputation. So my question is, what is the basis of imputation? How does Prasangika see what the basis of imputation is? How does Svatantrika see what the basis of and maybe even what does Chittamantra say the basis is?
Yeah. Quran condition the issue again. The Karasol Nanga of Chig the Karsol and the Dakshida Taktra Sajor again. Senata because Dakshila 10 and touching on the tower Sigorwa. That they let do the social sagi any Dakshin wins in that they'll talk with called Damada Shay again. The Indio Kala, Panatang Anzung and a chick to Kalang Anzo, Chetamjal Ranshin Drubagi, that talk that Chigor again. Rashiman Ranshin Drubaja Tayung or again. Sidio Kala Bena Uma Tenjubergi and then Dakshi the Candidate Munzi Chigoras, Condaxi Delatin Tago or again. Tagana Saint Penata, Chemani, Semzabagi, and Daxi singing again. Candidate Munzi Chigo didn't have your vessel. Daxi down what talk down this or talk about
Daxi the 다. 그래. 다 노동을 다 개발 다 대교하게 빼다 나기도 이제 빼다 강사 좀 샤샹다 가지고 봐. 풍부가 총점을 애니 빼 강사서 발로 딱 그러면도 지금 애니 풍부가 그 쟤네 양조 유의 등 주요한 그 쟤에는 이해하면도 세다 뒤랑이 요말라고라. 다 단다 러시 메시지 르바 다시를 따가할 때 다시도 풍부가에 코로나가 강하려양 주야 그거로
나래 니지 그거로
풍부거는요 지금 맞던데고 그 다시 속수 간 주야 그거로 이등도 요와시 유주요 모두 또 가지고 샤샤 되고 말아 되게 제발 좀 해다
in terms of identifying basis of imputation, I think they have agreement here. For example, our 5 aggregates, right, constitute the basis of imputation for a person, okay? And they all will agree with that. So let's say our body and mind, in other words, the 5 aggregates skandhas constitute the basis of imputation. Now, according to Prasangika Madhyamikins, this collection of the 5 aggregates, which is the basis of imputation, right? The person is nothing but merely labeled onto this collection of the 5 aggregates. Okay? There's nothing right from the side of the aggregates, right, that says, hello, I'm a person, call me one, right? There's nothing there. Okay? Now, according to the essentialists, for example, like Chitta Martins, they would say, you know what? Yes, that collection of the 5 aggregates is the basis, we agree, but something has to exist from its own side too, right? It's not enough to label something onto that. Something from the side of the basis exists, and then something is labeled from the subjective point of view, right? And this is where the disagreement is between the Prasangika Madhyamikins and the essentially. They said from the side of the aggregates, there's a something, right? It should be findable as a person. There's a something that exists from that side, right?
So are you saying the Prasangikas don't think there's anything from the side of the basis? Nothing
anything,
at all.
Right. That jana again the Karso or Umatenju Chevin Daxi Rangwin Kai Yomar Selago. The Daxi Kora Yomar Sigmar.
다시 걸어 요마도 시고마라 다 풍부가들 강사 따라 다 강사 레스라라 다 시드면 로산지라라 늘 봤다 왔다 가면 이게 풍부가 쎄이나
예, 요말.
야 요말 시고라
다 건조 단다 마바는 예 보고.
런지메지 되게 따서때 제냐 이런 게 되고 말아
알아. 제도 갈다 디시발 샤데 차고지로 베게.
다 시다 왔다 강사 샤니 전 시다 다도 수보데 말이지 다 군시면 되고 그 마샤 니 세이나 기사 샤고로 군시 되게 군시 샤고로 다 너데바 지라마도 풍부 윤도 쓰고 다 거기 타도 페이지 시발 두야 직바 되지래다.
According to Prasangika Madhyamikins, it is onto the collection of our 5 aggregates a person is merely imputed. So whatever your name is, let's say, use my name, right, Tenzin. Right, Tenzin is simply imputed onto the collection of my body and mind. Now, if you look up for Tenzin, right, which part is Tenzin, right? Is it this body or different parts of the body or my mind conscious or combination of something? They said nothing is findable as a Tenzin. It's just a merely labeled reality, isn't it? Now, they're not saying that the 5 aggregates don't exist. They exist. They're saying that the person that's imputed onto that is not findable in the aggregates. Now, according to essentially, something is findable, isn't it? So that's why in different schools of thought, they said that, okay, so which is the person really? Is it his or her body or the mind? So then most of them think like, the body cannot be, because at the end of the day, you die, you're cremated, or you're burned, something, right? So it cannot be. So now they said it's somewhere in the psychology or the mind. A person has to be findable. And this is where those who assert, some have asserted the mind basis of all, Gyeltsen, isn't it? Alayana Vijnana. They said, there, something exists there. That's what the person is, Alayana Vijnana, right? And then other schools who don't accept the mind basis of all, Alayana Vijnana, they said, what? No, there is the, the mental consciousness, right? That is the real person. So for them, person is just not merely labeled. Something has to exist from its own side. If you look, what we find is either maybe the Alayana Vijnana or the mental consciousness. Yeah.
If you say the person exists on the basis of the 5 aggregates, and then you look for any one of the 5 aggregates,
right, that's
then that deconstructs.
What?
Whichever 5 aggregate you look for, you cannot find that either.
That's right.
So there's this infinite regress.
Right.
So if that's the case, you can't, none of those 5 aggregates either have.
Right.
So that disappears. So then what is that basis that you're looking at if it itself, even though 5 aggregates are not findable either?
Right.
So what is that? Is that out there, or is that not out there? If it's not
Okay, right.
It's not sufficient to just say, oh, that person exists on the basis of the 5 aggregates.
Right.
The 5 aggregates also are not findable.
That again, did they say in a district was or that and Pumbungalia Kansa Tower again? That Kansa the Pumbungan at Saga do the Nigio Marwagi. Nia Mia Meduka Daxi Koraya, Mabel Sadgorwagi, Manuze. South to those or Daxi Koraya again.
That Daxi Koran Chai, that
Daxi sure Daxi and Taxa Daxi Koral Ham also. That can send a year Marwagi.
That Daxi Koran, young Daxi Koran station, the Subun of Shana. Subun Pate on the Tita, do Chamon, the Mate or Tatu do Chamoni Gora. Zeus Nigo, that the Rangi musician, Subun do Chamol Tura. He was in the Gizi Chamol Tura, but the Nia came along the Shadow Marika. Take you what did it say over Mara?
Shibaki Thomas.
Shibaki Tower did a soup to the cell, Maricora, Tagara, Pumungal Tower, Tagara Shah, that Nicola young just saying. Tadu to share the show.
Takanje indeed do Chamodi in the Shibaki Tomania, that dinner party again,
that is Zeus go, which is a Taru Ganga, Tados and the Zeus Nigurs go. That is go.
Yes, according to Pasengiga Madamigans, if we look for the person in the aggregates, that person is not findable. Yeah, that's why they said a person is a merely labeled reality. Whereas according to essentialists who believe there should be something findable, so then they said, let's say, if you look at our body is also a merely labeled phenomenon. So what is a body? So if you look down, some schools said that you have to find that subtle particle, isn't it? There has to be something findable, and you will find a subtle particle, right? They said it is a substantially existent particle. That is the real body. Okay? Now, beyond this, you don't analyze. They said, I found it. This is it, right? Or some people say, no, there's no such thing as findable in the body, but it's in the psychology of things. So then they go to the very subtle moment of mind or consciousness, right? And they said, this is it. Beyond this, you don't need investigation. This is the person, right? So this is how the different schools of thought, have different positions on this matter. So for Pasengiga, it's a merely labeled thing. Nothing is findable at the end, right? Yeah. Yeah. Vladimir, yeah. Oh, yeah, anybody?
The Rangi Munju Kansal, Tayu, the Zio Reni Shawara. But the Tilto, that don't say I did Zio Shawara.
No, sir.
The Shu Gangal Kaji, Jane in Yak, Gangal Zio Shawara.
No, sir.
Yamana Daki, Yamana, Kekito, Kanshi Kantaji Vajaja, Manzupan, Torikazo, Nangas Lavina, Nangeta, the Pagi down the Shawara. That did not do 2 years, make a Taran, Nanka Shawara. She said, don't buy me Nakashatu, or Zishawara.
So according to Savatandika mathematics school below, they always assert that with regard to a single phenomenon, we have to posit two things. There is an imputed aspect and there is a substantial aspect. Okay, that something has to be findable. Okay, yeah.
So, if we were to take an orange ball
Right.
and an orange,
Mm-hmm.
the distinguishing characteristic within the conventionally existent aggregates
Right.
that make the orange validly labelable, for
Right,
lack of a
right,
better
right.
word,
And
as
that-
appearing as nothing other than an orange.
Uh-huh.
There are still some distinguishing characteristics.
Yes.
Is this just describing how these distinguishing characteristics exist? Do they, some say, oh, well, this exists intrinsically, they're on the side of the object.
Right.
Some say no matter how much you look
Right.
for it, you still can't find
Right.
these distinguishing characteristics, can't establish them.
Uh-huh.
Similar in the sense of a person, where you said that Jigta is this conventionally existent network of aggregates is conventionally existent, but it's the ignorance which projects onto that
The intrinsic reality.
transitory network that is the mistaken view of intrinsic existence, but they exist conventionally. And so I'm wondering what the Prasangika view is of those distinguishing characteristics that allows you to conceptually isolate something as nothing other than an orange,
Right.
nothing other than the fruit orange.
Okay, sure. Kora kandi show the this go again. Ta pena nganzo chaluma ra chele chasha ba na so wa ge. Ta chaluma ngone di chikche ra wa ge. Ya chaluma drabu ji yo so wa ge. Ina ta chaluma ngone di ko kora ngone yin be ki kyejo sho wa ge. Ro wa. Ko the kyejo del shane chaluma juma de chele di juma di ngone de res lab sa sho wa. Ta tanda nganzo de drupta dama de te go la drupta kha je ki chaluma ngone di kora sha ge 다 계좌에서는 와게 계좌에 랑싱 드루 요라 라면 제다로와 계좌에 랑싱 드루 요마르스로 와게 이제 만다버데 셰인 거로 와스라로와 제대로 갈라 페나 단다 먼저 텐주 버리지 차샤비나 최소를 소소소 뭐 좋아해 준 거로 계좌에서 와게 딱 어디 안에 가서 오다 똑다 좀 레스 거래 안에 디 컨텐츠를 다 삼당 거래서 그러게
뭐 대지거다 베나 대지거다 딱동선 답변 탁바 뒤다 뒤고는 니들 다 똑배도 지고 지겨라 왔어.
나래
다 그래 탁바 뒤도 뒤레스 뒤고 개발 요르스나. 다 대지거라 다 근데 대지거라. 뒤기 샤와심이 있다고 다 간지.
나래
그래.
나래
다 탁바 뒤도 소견에 독주하지도 요 말와.
나래
그래 뒤고네 뒤 독주라.
나래
진짜 근데 대셔버다.
나래
틀려 나기 때라 나기 참만 없이도 와. 야 지금 많이 받지 까발 본바스다 해도 디레다나 야 용토고 말이야 봐. 나기 참마시도 와.
나래
근데 그 나기 거네 그런 제 텔레파 땡데 쏘서는 그런 콘서 쏘온디 단 디고 줘야지. 로루지 그걸 뭐야? 배 텔 네바도 짜는 명계질 거 따셔는 배도고 말아.
나래
어디래?
다 단다게 탁라 될이야 장르 못다디 고 주기 닥시 레 되는 차대요 봐. 닥시 삼아셔고 말다.
이제 류 닥시 때 말이지. 다 그런디 탁다 류에 사야지. 그런 로mol다 류도 사야다. 류고네 성경 류다 사야지. 그 딱딱 찍어지 야 되거라.
나래
그래.
나래
얘는 다다 탁다 류 중에디 그런 트리 미히티. 그 디그 류디 탁다 류디게 님 소자야 도야 샤요 말아.
나래
류고네디 소자야 도야 샤요 말아.
나래
그 샤워 좀 줘서 샤고라. 땅배땅 찍바에는 가르치는 이거 저와 지기도는 때 이제 거기 개발 드셔 버렸어.
So Geshe has referred back to one of our classic examples of how the coiled rope in a dark corner is misapprehended as a snake, right? Versus the real snake. It works the same way, your orange and the fake orange, right? So now we change to the snake. Yeah. So in terms of how things are labeled onto something, like somebody misapprehends a coiled rope in a dark corner as a snake. So, oh, there's a snake, versus the real snake, we call snake. In terms of labeling, right, the process seems to be the same. Yeah. But one is a mistaken consciousness perception that's doing the labeling. The other is a valid perception. Yeah. And how we differentiate between those two, the fake and the real snake, is again, we take into account what is called the chawasa, but the functionality, Right? The real snake is capable of biting you and shooting the the poison into you, but the fake one is a fake. It doesn't have that capability, right? So that's why I think it is a very subtle matter in some sense that when we talk about what constitutes as a valid basis for imputation versus right, that it comes to that. What does a valid basis of imputation mean? Because simply because you label something as something, it does not become that, right? We cannot call that pillar, vase. My pot is over there standing. Like, you can't because it does not, right? So that's the issue. So yes, according to answer your question, the question directly is yes. According to Prasangika mathematicians, based upon the functionality of the real snake, we said it has that characteristics, which defines it as being a real snake, different from the coiled rope, right? Yeah. Okay, Geshe is telling me. So we'll stop there. We all will think more and come back again next time. I have some announcements to make. Sera Shue again. Study Chungin Yimadi Gyeltsen Rinpoche Kwangso Chubiki again. Yang Kwangta Saji Che. Yang Tari Nisasum Yimba Sapiamba Ningu Jaulia Pau Chube Tangju Lenshkin. Two announcements. One, April 12th, I believe it's a Tuesday, is the anniversary. Parinirvana anniversary of His Eminence Late Rinpoche. So in the evening, 7:30, we will have Tsok offering. Okay? So that is April 12th. I think it's Tuesday, but don't believe me, the Tuesday part. April 12th, whatever day that is. And the second announcement is on April 23rd, Saturday. Those who have received the solitary Yamantaka empowerment and done the retreat, we will do what is called self-initiation, Tangju, that day, April 23rd, afternoon at 2. We'll start at 2. So if you have received the initiation, done the retreat standard, then you're welcome to self-initiation. Kange Lode, Dimye, Dinda, Ninda, Namda, Robseve, Jinye, Dungun, Geshe, Seje, Nije, Toga, Lebomze, Kanda, Seve, Zara, Mari, Mendo, Dunge, Kula, Boje, Daze, Yala, Juju, Yanden, Sung, Druda, Chedo, Nimo, Nilo, Leje, Chado, Teze, Mari, Muse, Dunge, Jinye, Jeze, Radena, Dene, Dazi, Saju, Taze, Yunde, Lenzo, Gyase, Tuvu, Gu, Chudra, Dalu, Muse, Jambe, Yang, Dio, Marabazana, Omarabazana, Zende, Juji, Jera, Vuse, Dalu, Timo, Memba, Rasene, Kada, Teju, Shulu, Lode, Babe, Nawan, Zendo, So, Lode, Jazu, Vujun, Pega, Kesan, Kongwe, Chudo, Memba, Shin, Temba, Zenla, Wando, Jichu, Tanyan, Jogun, So, page 21. Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma rouses us from the stupor of our delusions and free us from the iron chains of our karma, who wills this sort of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. You who have been pure from the beginning, who have completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, I bow down to you, Manjushri, Om Arapaza Nadi. O compassionate one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into Buddha's words and the text that explain them. Page 31. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate being, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, O Lord Sang Tenzin Wangda, respectfully I pray.
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí ngài điều phục khai chướng ngài, tựa nhật quan lan tỏa khắp mười phương, bậc thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim ngài bát nhã kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báo, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thù thắng, cùng đại bi ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử. Tiếng rồng vang ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp chướng, gồm trí tuệ ngài chặt đứt vô minh, tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn. Ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tứ hảo Như Lai, đê đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, cúi xin ngài tận diệt ám chướng vô minh. Om Arapasanadi, con khẩn cầu dưới gót sen bậc đại trí, ban pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh. Pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận dài, như diệu hương ngọt ngào từ sen trắng, đàn xanh nơi trí thủ thắng đại dương, hàng thiện căn như ông mật thọ nương, hồng danh ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá, đấng thiện xảo uy dũng bảo tồn pháp bảo vô giá. Nam mô Lốp Sang Tenzin Quang Đắc, xin cung kính trì niệm.
Ten